work. This one might be quite useful for an investment bank. So for the M&A side, because you kind of need to do a lot of accounting for that side. In terms of advising in human relations, you know, for any client-facing role, you kind of do need to give some advice and talk to your clients about what you think might be best for them. It's quite transferable, whether you're doing it as a part-time job in a sales role at a retail store, or whether at a professional role. In terms of what recruiters look for in a CV, of course, you'd want to talk about how you've collaborated with others. So, you know, teamwork, being in group projects whilst at school, or actually having part-time work already is a great way to kind of demonstrate that you've been able to communicate with others, create a good team environment, and showcase that you're not just an independent worker, but able to kind of build on everyone's success rather than your own actual achievements. On top of that, they do like to see some actions of leadership. So, you know, kind of managing the team, kind of giving out orders. This is a great way to showcase that you're not just at the bottom of the barrel of the team. You're able to kind of mix the responsibilities around. So you could take charge, other people can take charge. It really does help to show that you're willing to kind of have the skills to progress in the role that you're doing and become a manager potentially. On top of that, you obviously want to show that you have an interest in the kind of role that you're looking for. So showing that you've attended kind of sessions with various banks or companies is a great way to highlight that. Attending skill sessions to show that you've kind of developed yourself, or even virtual experiences like the ones that Faraj do, is a great way to kind of build up your skills for a certain role. On top of that, you want to highlight your work ethic. So, like I said, always kind of show facts and figures of how you've got work done. For example, if you're in a kind of sales-oriented role, talk about how many sales that you've kind of done, you know, how many clients you've interacted with, if you've kind of increased the performance of the company. If you're in a more of a leadership and a management role, you might want to talk about how you've kind of talked about the strategy of the company and implemented that. And, you know, these are kind of some key ways that at a young age you could really showcase your skills. But lastly, you really want to highlight your personality, because with all of these kind of companies, they don't want people who are just a cookie cutter mode, that have great academics, that have these skills. They really want to see what's unique about you. So, you know, having your interests and extracurricular activities is a great way to kind of highlight that. You know, for me, I've kind of talk about my interest in poetry, and that's a great way to have a conversation starter with some of the recruiters. Some people I know have talked about winning sports competitions, kind of winning coding competitions, things like that. It's a great way to kind of show that you aren't just entirely focused on academics and career, but you have a life of your own that you could talk about with your team members.
Yeah, so now we're talking more about experience, getting experience. I mean, a lot of people worry about them not having a finance internship or something like that, especially that's very competitive. But I think that banks, more than anything, look for people that are interested. So, I mean, even if you have a finance internship, you'll be looking at your interest more than the actual technical knowledge that you have. So there are a lot of ways in how you can actually include experience that can make it stand out and look as an actual good candidate. So as Arman had also already spoken about actual jobs. So working retail as a waiter, organizing events are just great ways of reflecting the fact that you have characteristics that are related to leadership, teamwork, and management. These things can be perfect for investment banks. So don't hesitate about including a summer job, a part-time job, because that can actually make a lot of difference. So people are looking for students that already been working in restaurants because it shows that you're hardworking in a retail store, because you have dealt with clients, and it just shows that shows your work ethic and that you're willing to go out and work. And otherwise, for actually having experience is we have Clay, which is obviously us. We are on a profit that tries to help students as much as we can, and you can apply to have an equity risk analyst. It's 4 students, 5 students. So we basically accept everyone and try to find a very efficient way of passing assignments. So you can be exposed to the finance industry, show that you're interested, show that you're proactive. We give assignments like this, equity research. This week we have something about fintech, and we're always like trying to just reflect as many assignments as we can that can apply to as many different aspects. So that's a great way. Also, House Hack is just an amazing chance for you if you want to go into consulting. House Hack is just amazing. It has like one monthly event, but you actually get to work with real businesses. You get to work with quite strong startups that have a foundation that need a new business model. So you really get an exclusive experience. I mean, it just has started quite recently, I guess, maybe about 5 months ago. And since then, I've been going to every monthly event. There should be one happening in a few days, but it's great. I worked with a startup called Unirise, and now I'm an ambassador, and we're a nonprofit that help disadvantaged students. So there's always the opportunity of meeting CEOs, of learning, of having that consulting experience, which shows that you're proactive. So that's very good. Another thing, work with the startups, which I have already like spoken about, but startups are always looking for students to help them and to build them up, because obviously they are not as free in their budget as like a big established company. So showing that you work with a startup can also be good for consulting, for finance, and it will give you like exclusive experience that can be readily found. Another thing that I
Apologies about that. I think Amin did disconnect, I believe. So can Chris just readmit him if he does join back?
yeah, sorry, I got disconnected for a second. Now I'm gonna be Chris, can you allow me to just host it? I think I'm having problem with hosting it, so yeah, okay. So, okay, I was talking about doing your own startup, because I believe, like I said, if you can't actually be accepted into the environment, you can show that you are a good manager by doing a small thing. It can be an e-commerce store, it can be like a small thing, it can be even an Instagram page where you post finance, because in a way that's like a small business. There's just so many ways of being creative and showing that you're passionate about finance. So starting a small thing, it doesn't have to take a lot of money. I myself had like an e-commerce store that sold like cases from AliExpress, so drop shipping, just anything. It's just showing that proactive, that you're a leader, that you're a manager, and that you're interested. So that can be a page on Instagram, can be a website, can be a small thing that you sell locally, anything that you're passionate about and you think is worth of your time. So that's mostly it for our session today. I have a few questions to Arman, but if you have anything, you can ask right now.
Yeah, so Arman, you obviously said the for UCV use a font size of between 11 or 12. So I was just wondering, what font type do you use? Do you use Arial, Times New Roman, and so forth?
Yeah, so for me, I don't know. I don't use those two. I'm a little bit like different in that sense. I use Cambria Math. That's kind of like my default font for everything. But that's really like just personal preference. Normally everyone does use like Arial and I suppose like Times New Roman, but that's just my personal preference. So yeah, it is still like quite a like non-fancy font. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any more questions? You can put in the chat. You can turn up the camera. Feel free to do anything.
Yeah, so Arman, I was just wondering, you obviously got some work experience before you joined LSE. So I was just wondering, how did you find that work experience? Did you have to go on the website like Barclays, Grant Thornton, etc., and so forth?
Yeah, okay. So thank you for that question. So with the Barclays work experience, I was just a week long. It was just like a retail bank. I did it like back in year 10. So what I did really was just apply on their website because I could, like my secondary school wanted everyone to do work experience for 2 weeks. So I kind of thought, oh, what kind of areas would I be interested in? And I knew that Barclays Bank do work experience for students. So then I kind of just applied for that. In terms of Grant Thornton and JP Morgan, both of those I kind of got through the Social Mobility Foundation. So they're partners with both of these companies. With JP Morgan, it was a 2 week experience that was in person before COVID. And we kind of got to stay in a hotel bankside at LSE really, to kind of just like get to talk to everyone that's attending the event and just stay together. And then we went to JP Morgan every day. I was in internal audit. Some people had other roles. Really, we just got to learn about like the culture and so on. With Grant Thornton, it was kind of similar with Social Mobility Foundation. I guess there are like, Morgan Stanley does like the step in, step up program. I know like HSBC also does like some sixth form work experience. So those opportunities are available. It's just trying to like actively find them. Luckily for me, I was kind of handed these, but there are opportunities that are kind of available if you do look for those. So yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, so one thing I also have a question because you're doing like I think it's called Morrison, the summer internship. Can you tell us more about that? How you got it? What is it about? Is it like private banking or something?
Yeah, so with the Morrison Wolf internship, essentially what I did is I kind of with my poetry, I created a poem that was like about kind of finance and like the history of money, and that was submitted to the Futures and Finance competition that St. James's Place kind of just started this year. So really, that's the entire application process. You kind of need to make a creative answer to the questions that they ask. So they ask like, what does money mean to you, and kind of describe someone who's in control of their finances. And I kind of created that to a poem. Other people kind of made songs, they made like videos, they created essays. And as part of that, they had 15 winners. So 5 winners had like a full like 8 week summer internship with St. James's Place, and 10 winners kind of had a week-long internship with practices. So my one was a week-long summer internship with Morrison Wealth. It's a wealth management firm. During that experience, I kind of got to learn about kind of like what advisors do, what the operations team kind of do, learn about a bit about like mortgages, pensions, kind of like ISAs and so on. And it was a great opportunity to hear about that kind of industry. And it is open for everyone within the year 13 to second year of university to apply. So if you lot are interested to kind of show off your creative skills, then I do urge you to apply. I think it will open around December of this year. And then like you normally have to submit it by like February of next year.
That's very interesting. Like so it's like poetry.
Yeah, so yeah, it's quite a unique experience. I do have one direct message question. So it just asked about kind of like structuring virtual work experiences on the CV. So internships from like Bright Network and Forage. So the way I kind of tackled those ones is I wouldn't count it as actual work experience necessarily. So Forage specifically state that virtual internships with like the likes of JP Morgan and like city and so on are to be added in your achievement section rather than in the work experience section, because you haven't technically worked with that company itself. Instead, it's more like Farad is the one who's leading the sessions, but they've worked with JP Morgan to kind of create it, but you're not actually working in their offices or having a real live program. It's virtual and it's like pre-recorded, so it's best to put in the achievements. I'd say it's similar with Bright Network. It's best to kind of put in the achievement section or like extracurricular, because it's not necessarily like work experience you've done with those companies, but rather like something kind of completely different. And then we have Christos asking about societies that you know, are recommended to join. So you can join some finance related ones. I know that, you know, it depends kind of like what area of finance you want to get into. So, you know, there are like mergers and acquisitions, there's trading, there's like just general kind of like investment banking groups. I know like it varies from university to university. Sometimes like I know UCL does host a lot of kind of events with the M&A group that other universities are allowed to attend. So those are like some great ways to get some like financial knowledge and also talk to kind of key figureheads at different banks. Personally, I haven't really joined those societies because I feel like it's more valuable to join societies that are more about personal development in other ways. So, you know, things like cultural societies, sports societies are things that are more close to me. I could do like finance related stuff on my own and kind of have my own different sessions with it. Or like what I tend to do is like join sessions that banks run in general. But you know, I know a lot of people do attend these finance related societies. It is down to personal preference, but it is good to showcase other kind of interests other than just finance or, you know, career focused things. So do have like a broad spectrum really.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
What division do you want to join in the future, and why that division in particular?
Okay, yeah, thank you for that question. So I'd say the division I want to join is the mergers and acquisitions, so the investment banking division. The reason why is, fortunately for me, with Morgan Stanley and HSBC, they allow you to explore all the different kind of client-facing roles that they have available. And with both of them, I kind of noticed that mergers and acquisitions and that kind of division is like the most suited for me. You know, they have long-term projects that are quite interesting. You're kind of you have quite a big responsibility in terms of interacting with clients as well, quite at quite a young age. And on top of that, the deals that you do are like obviously published in the news. So you know it is concrete, and I say yeah, like it kind of depends on the work that you're interested in. You know, I do like doing long-term projects, not something that's too fast-paced. And I do like having that interaction with management teams. It does sound like quite of interesting aspect. Whereas like sales and trading, you're kind of doing more fast-paced work. You're talking to clients, but for sales side. But with trading, it's like very numerical, very fast-paced, and the work that you do, you don't really kind of see it published anywhere, but it does have some impact. But I thought, yeah, the investment banking division is the one for me. Of course, the hours are quite long and quite heavy, but I feel like the amount of skills that you kind of develop during the first 2-3 years whilst working in there is quite like it's unlike any other role really. So that's just for me personally, but you know, any other role is also really great. It really does depend on your kind of skill set.
I agree. Interesting.
For
Good luck
question
for you.
by
Okay, so Andre wants to ask a question, and also
this one in the chat.
yeah, this yeah. Just, oh yeah, that's related to Cleo, yeah. So I'd say
No, the one before that. Where would we
okay.
live work experience? Where would you leave us?
Okay. Yeah. So with live 1 week work experience programs, it will go on your just like work experience area. So you know, like for Raj and Springpole, that those are just like achievements really, because they're not with the bank. But the ones that you do with your company, you do put it down on your work experience, um, because they're obviously relevant to the role and they're kind of like live, as you mentioned. On top of that, I'd say, as a kind of side note to that, um, ensure that whatever role that you're applying to, kind of tailor your CV and your skills to that role. So, just like I mentioned, you know, how like sales and trading is quite fast paced, whereas investment banking is like kind of longer projects. You might want to highlight those different natures of work within your CV. Similarly, you know, like some of them might be quite accounting heavy, just like investment banking. Regardless, like valuation is quite common throughout, so you might want to always have like some valuation skills, kind of things like that. But also, the amount of like teamwork and leadership skills that you have are quite important. So, like you have your situational judgment tests, and these kind of highlight the differences in the roles. Having that kind of understanding within your CV is great as well, because you know, with like investment banking, you know, you'll have like a lot of you'll have like a variety of work, and you expect a lot of unexpected work to kind of hit you. So you need to show that you're ready to adapt to that. So kind of highlighting that in your previous skills is a great thing. So you know, even if you did like a previous work experience or previous job role where you had like multiple tasks and you had to ensure that you did the most urgent ones first, is a great thing to kind of highlight. One example is like the Eisenhower Matrix, which is something I like to feature in like interviews. So it's a 2x2 grid where you kind of split urgent and non-urgent and important and not important tasks. And as a result, you're able to kind of delegate certain tasks to other colleagues, or you have like certain tasks that you need to do right now, certain tasks that you can kind of leave for a little while. It's a great way to show that you have that kind of understanding of how to kind of organize your tasks, especially depending on the role that you're doing. So there's a few more questions. So yeah, I'll start with a private one. So by Belle, so she's applying to some spring weeks as a fresher. Would it be detrimental if I don't have any previous experience in investment banks? And when we just say freshers should be applying for spring weeks, how early should we be applying? So personally, I know that previous investment banking experience isn't necessary. Of course, I did have some, but it wasn't actually related to the roles that we're applying to. So mine was an internal audit, and none of the roles I was kind of applying to had internal audit really. They were like sales and trading, capital markets, investment banking division. Um, Instead, it's the skills that you have in your current list of experience that is most important. You know, it doesn't have to be investment banking. It could be from other professional experiences. It could be from skill sessions, whether from your school, from a company, insight days, you know, like your previous work. If you have the skills for the role and you can demonstrate that, that's the main thing that they want to see. You know, I can have a experience at investment bank, but it might have no relation to the role that I'm applying to. They're going to just look at that negatively, really, because it's showing that, oh yeah, I've been to that bank, but I'm not able to actually demonstrate the skills that are needed for that role. So really, that's the most important thing. In terms of how early you should be applying, I noticed that the earlier you apply, the better. It kind of maximizes your chances of success, because a lot of these kind of applications are reviewed on a rolling basis, which means that as soon as someone's application is submitted and they meet the criteria and they get the offer, they do get that offer as soon as possible. And that just means that you're less likely to get an offer if you leave it for the last moment. You know, if you apply in the last moment, there's only going to be like a few, maybe like one or two spaces left. So you're really competing with a bunch of other people at that point, and they're going to be looking at those first individuals who submitted the application really. So your application is going to be seen at the end. But for applications that don't have a rolling basis deadline, I'd say, yeah, just try to apply as soon as possible, but obviously before that deadline. Because as soon as, like, the earlier you do it, it is better and it shows that you are motivated. But of course, don't don't send off a rushed application. Really show that you've put some thought and detail into it. So some advice that I'd suggest is attend events that these different companies are leading. So I know like Morgan Stanley have been running some events, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, they run events, you know, like there are a variety of events available for you, especially whilst you go to university. They may have recruiters attending the actual campus, like events at the campus. So definitely network in those events. Do take up opportunity of those. On top of that, some other kind of key tips I'd say is obviously actively research about what's going on in that company. Try to find the unique selling points that make that company different. That's the best part about networking with individuals. You get to learn about their role. You could kind of like name drop them into your kind of like cover letter or your interview if they're okay with that. And on top of that, you could easily ask them kind of what attracted them to that company compared to other companies, especially if they've worked in a variety of companies. You can find out what makes that one that they're currently working in the one that stands out for them the most. And that's a great way to kind of get unique selling points. The next question's from Andres. In terms of additional activities or intersections, can we write about professional football? You don't have proof of reference in since it was 5 years ago and the team was not popular. So I'd say yes, you can add professional football. Of course, it would have been greater if it was a bit more recent. 5 years ago is a bit outdated, but it is of course at your age, because you're still quite like young and so on, they might give you some leeway. It would be best, yeah, like to showcase some kind of accolade or achievement that you got from your professional football experience. For example, if you kind of won like a competition or something, that would be a great thing to talk about in your interview. But really and truly, they want to see that kind of continued interest in activity. So if you do kind of attend like the football society or like football club at your university, that's a great way to show that you've kind of continued that interest. Because interviews tend to be a little bit later on. Of course, some might be early, but like in-person interviews might be after you've joined university. So it's great for you to kind of join the football society and show that you've kind of continued that passion, really. But you can reference that achievement with your professional football. Definitely, even though the team wasn't popular, that isn't really that doesn't matter. It's more about like the skills that you've developed and the experience that you've got from it. So yeah. Okay, of course, if you lot do have any other questions, you know, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm sure Amin might be able to direct you with that. So if you wanted some questions via there, that's another medium. I can just help out with like other questions that you lot may have, whether that be university-based, application-based. Of course, my like knowledge is subjective to myself, like my personal experiences and what I've learned. Of course, everything does change, you know, and you know, the industry does have like different niches. You know, I'm more suited with like investment banks, wealth management, and so on. But you know, areas like consulting, I'm not well suited on. I can help potentially, you know, as well as tech, but not that much. So yeah.
Yeah, so I have like one question to keep you on. It's just one thing about like you have worked for Morgan Stanley and HSBC. So HSBC is quite a big bank, but when it comes to investment banking, I think you could say that Morgan Stanley is just like a higher tier. But how do you think does that reflect in the actual culture when it comes to the difference between HSBC and Morgan Stanley when it comes to involvement, to how close the network is, the culture, you know, just all these, you know, questions, you know, about the culture.
Yeah, so between the two, obviously, virtually it's harder to distinguish the differences in culture. But what I've noticed is Morgan Stanley are very, yeah, they're a very key, like they're very key and active on like embracing their culture. They do mention diversity and inclusion quite a bit, in terms of their kind of like the work that they've been doing in a sense. And like I noticed that they're quite friendly and open to helping you develop and succeed and invest in in your kind of career. You know, I could ask people questions and they're willing to help. Of course, in terms of emailing people questions, it's less likely that you get a response because a lot of the people are busy, especially seniors. It's best to do it as you're there with them. With HSBC, similarly, you know, they do really value your time and effort into kind of applying. And I'd say with them, they have a lot more focus on ESG, I'd say, if that's something that people are interested in. They do talk a bit about like the green bonds and the work that they're doing around that.
Is that Morgan Stanley? Or
No,
HSBC?
HSBC.
Okay.
Yeah, and another thing is that HSBC like to talk about how they're like a global bank. So how they
Yeah.
kind of have like some power in every region, you know, not just like United Kingdom, but, you know, like Asia and, you know, a bit in North America and so on. They have like that prowess across everywhere. I'd say Morgan Stanley also have it, but, you know, they don't like to highlight it as much. But I guess that's like the differences in nature. Like the HSBC really love talking about kind of the like global aspect of the bank. I don't remember entirely, but I do believe like Morgan Stanley do have a rotational program after your second year of working there in the full-time role, and this is a great way for you to kind of rotate whether between different like sectors, so like between investment banking, sales and trading, and so on. I think it's just specific to like the client-facing roles, but you could also go to different countries and work there. So I'm not too sure if it's like every year. I think it is like every year you rotate. So for 2 years you rotate. For 1 year you go into one area, and then for another year you go to another area. It's a great way to kind of expand your network and also learn different skills. They're very interested in career development and internal mobility. So they will give you the opportunity to kind of move around if you want, especially if you're not entirely enjoying the role. If those roles that you've kind of rotated to do have like positions available, you could potentially even land a job in that role. So yeah, that's something that I did notice about Morgan Stanley. Now I'll go back to the chat section. So any suggestions on how to follow the markets and develop trade ideas? So in terms of following the market, what I'd say is, of course, you know, it is quite generic, but it is useful to kind of keep on to Financial Times, like Bloomberg, and like all these kind of news outlets, because they do give great information about what's kind of going on in the market. Yahoo Finance also gives quite a bit of in-depth detail about a certain company. So, you know, stuff like their sales, I mean, they're like EBITDA, their EBIT, their kind of like stock price and so on, kind of multiples. That information is available on Yahoo Price, which is good for trade ideas, I suppose, because you're able to kind of compare their multiples to another company's kind of like performance and so on. Another suggestion I say is, if you're interested in like some companies, I advise that those companies be not generic ones like Google and Amazon and Tesla, because that's kind of like what everyone might be talking about. It's better to talk about like companies that are less known or like in different regions of the world, especially if you have kind of an insight in terms of like geographically. You know, I know some people are from like international like countries, not just UK. So, you know, people from India might want to talk about like an Indian company and the stocks and the stock market there and so on. Or like China, you might want to talk about a Chinese company and their performance. It's something that's more closer to you, but also less common for someone in the UK to know about. On top of that, I'd say don't just talk about like one article, one bit of news. Talk about like kind of like a holistic overview about that company's performance, because if you're kind of a sales and trader or equity researcher, you want to show that you've really put thought into this buy or sell call for that company. So it is great to kind of talk about the kind of long-term trajectory of that company, their strategy. You can find stuff like on their financial accounts about their strategy and their presentations on their website. Because this really shows that you've kind of gone over and beyond. So Luca has a message applying early September to be the competition for Springs, but I'm not going to start uni at that point. Should I mention my relevant modules and my predicted grade on my CV? I'd say you can talk a little bit about like your relevant modules, but it's like isn't a necessity. I'd say predicted grades. Generally, if you can talk to someone from the university to discuss like what they expect what they expect from you and where they expect you to be. If you have that contact, that would be great. Otherwise, it's best not to kind of put the predicted grades since you haven't started yet and have that conversation. But normally, a lot of people just put like predicted first and so on. But it isn't really a necessity because they're not too interested in the modules that you do right at the early stage. It's more about like as you've had that experience there. So if you apply early and they kind of see it, it's good to kind of back up that information as you progress with the stages. But yeah, I'd say like your predicted grade isn't a necessity really. So yeah. So next we have Pratik. I'll be graduating next year with bachelor's in finance and accounts. I'm planning to do master's in finance and investments or asset management. Do you think I'm making the right decision? So I'm much young. Well, I assume I'm much younger than you because you're like heading off to your master's, so it's harder for me to give advice on that. But I'd say it is quite a subjective choice there. I'm not too like well versed on the differences between doing a master's or going directly into the role. I know masters is more valuable in like places like the United States because you end up kind of like rather than being an analyst, you might end up being an associate. It really does depend on the kind of university that you do the masters in, because like reputation for masters does matter quite a bit, I'd say. On top of that, you need to kind of find ways as to whether that masters will be relevant for the roles that you will be applying to in the future. You know, will it really benefit you in terms of skills and experiences? And do you see it being like a valuable experience? Like, will it kind of make you different and like stand out compared to other candidates? Because that's like the main thing that recruiters really want to see. And then is it possible to get an IB or BA internship in a different country right after graduation or post-graduation? I'd say that really does depend on the company. So I know some may like sponsor visas for you to apply like in another country. Of course, if you're already a citizen in another country, then it's very easy for you to apply in that country. They normally have like criteria such as being like a native speaker as well as having a high proficiency of English as well. So it is possible. Certain companies may allow it, but you might want to have some dialogue with recruiters about that because they probably will be best suited to give you some advice regarding that kind of process. In terms of your debating experience, it does once again depend on the level that you do it. So if it's something that you've just been doing in school, just casually, and there's nothing too much to show for it. But with any experience or like any society or whatever that you join, it's really key to kind of highlight some achievement that you've kind of got from doing that. So, you know, if you're like a part of a society, you know, are you the head of the society? Have you like showed kind of like teamwork skills and so on? Or, you know, have you been a treasurer? Have you like shown like a financial aptitude? Or have you like attended a competition and so on? Because that's like the main thing. If you do it in a very like casual manner and haven't like had a lot to show for it, it's okay, but like they really want to see that you go over and beyond. Next we have Asker. Nice to meet that meeting variable with where/who should I contact to for getting the recording of this meeting? I'd
Yeah,
say
so I think I can answer
it's
that.
Mr.
So
Yeah,
so you can go
it's
to
Arman.
Clio on LinkedIn or go to the website straight away and then just apply there. When you apply there, you'll be added to our letter, which is sent on an email every 3 days or more or less. And you can also join the group chat. We can also have information about the recording. I think, yeah, do that. Just apply on the website and you'll be added to the newsletter, or you can just contact me personally on LinkedIn. So I'm gonna put in my username, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably put my LinkedIn down as well with you.
Really, yeah, in order to get to the group chat, you should go into the website, apply, and like the moment you apply, will automatically be having like a link to actually click on and be like to join the group basically. You just
Yeah.
like apply in the website and you'll have the link automatically.
What someone just asked if like having a member position is if it has a place. It really depends on how much you do as a member. So if you can show that you've had active engagement within the society, you know, you've like helped run events, you've helped network with individuals to plant, you've you know, even like been like actively engaged and so on. If you can talk about that in your CV, even if it's like a bullet point or two, it's great to add that on rather than just show that you're a member. Because, you know, when I was kind of like in your position or in some of your positions last year, when I just started university, I kind of just put down, oh, like I'm interested in football, I'm interested in poetry, I'm interested in this and that, but I never really explained it. I never really give her like a little bit of information about it. Whereas now I've kind of put down a bullet point or two about what I kind of did within that area. And that really showcases that it's not just something that you've name dropped. There is some like evidence for it. That's what they really want to see, because regardless, you know, you could be interested in anything. That's the skills that you develop in that the recruiters really want to see, as well as the accomplishments and like how that makes you unique as well. Because anyone can do football, anyone can do, you know, like reading, anyone can do attend any society really. You know, there's probably a bunch of people that go to like thousands of societies across the university, all the universities in the UK, and they're applying to all these companies. But it's really about how it's made you develop, especially if there's like skills that you haven't been able to highlight already in your CV. That's a great way to showcase it. So yeah.
It's about financial modeling, I believe.
Sorry?
There's a question about financial modeling.
Oh,
Where did you learn it from? Like
where did you
personally, like
yeah. Okay, so with my financial modeling, I learned through a few variety of ways. So some of it is just like through personal learning, you know, just like going online, you know, going on YouTube, learning about the free financial statements, and then learning about DCFs and so on. You know, I know like Mergers and Acquisitions is a company that kind of do stuff, breaking into Wall Street and like Wall Street preps. They all have like a variety of guides and so on that will help kind of build your knowledge. But on top of that, I'd say I learned like some financial modeling through SEO. So I know that they run events with a lot of kind of like industry leaders, and they're willing to kind of talk to you about your kind of like DCFs, like kind of like your valuation multiples and so on, and that's a great way to kind of develop those skills. Obviously, like your internship experience is going to be another way because you're able to communicate with like the employees there. I also had, well, HSBC did provide me a resource called Fitch Learning. Normally that does cost money, but they do have some free resources there. And within that, I got to learn about like merger modeling and like LBOs and so on, as well as like basic fundamentals of accounting. And I guess that's like a great way to kind of develop some of your technical knowledge, depending on what areas you want to go into. So if you do apply to HSBC, hopefully they still provide that. I'm not too sure if they will, but that's a great way to kind of develop your technical skills, especially if you want to apply to other companies for summer internships. Though, yeah, like I said, they have some free resources. Faraj provide free virtual internship experiences. That's another way that I got to kind of put my experiences into action. So, you know, all those lessons I did on YouTube, on Fitch Learning and so on, I implemented that onto these fake tasks, like virtual tasks that these banks have created, right? You know, I created like a DCF, like a discounted cash flow model, based on the information that they provided. And, you know, I filled in the like income statement and the balance sheet and made the projections. That's like, Faraj is a great way to have that kind of experience, really. But yeah, there's really just a variety of ways online nowadays to kind of get experience and develop your skills. Yeah, so.
So our last call for the last questions. Okay, I think that's it. I don't know how this too long. Well, yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who's that have attended today. You know, it clearly shows that you lot are highly motivated for you know, preparing for these applications. Obviously, my last tip for like CVs would be to just really tailor that CV to the role that you're applying to, because that's really a key thing. But also have a good understanding as to what you're applying to, because you know they'll notice if you don't have that much of an understanding as to what role that you're into. You know, like last year, I don't have much of an understanding as to what mergers and acquisitions were. Be proactive, learn about these things. You know, you can ask me, of course, if you want to learn a bit about these areas, but you know, it's good to kind of take your own initiative and really take some time out to kind of get an understanding as to what role would be best suited for you and have understanding as to why and showcase why that your skills are useful for that role. So yeah, and thank you for inviting me, Arman. So yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for coming. It has been an amazing event. So thank you all for coming. If you have any questions, you can ask me. You can join Clio. Like I said, we're always open for applications, and we have always these weekly sessions where we're going to be inviting people from the industry, doing workshops related to CV or technical questions, so on. But yeah, like I said, here we have website, but that's it for now. Thank you so much for coming, and goodbye. Have a great day.
Good weekend.
Thank you.